I love salt in dessert. It really gives it a certain something special. Swirl it up, swirl it up. Desserts are the perfect way to end your meal. In this chapter, I'm gonna be making two simple recipes for you that are really delicious. One starting with the brown butter apple cobbler, which has that beautiful liquid gold brown butter in it that just really elevates any dessert. This smells fantastic. And then I'm gonna show you a fun twist on store-bought ice cream that's just gonna amp it up a little bit and takes no time. One of the things I love about making cobblers and crisps when I'm cooking for a crowd is that they come together in relatively no time at all. You can have them ready to go before your guests even arrive, and you can change them up seasonally. I'm gonna use apples because they're in season, but you could easily sub in figs, pears, berries. You have so many different options. I like to use a variety of fruit too, just so you have different textures. And I love the layer on top of the cobbler. It's the best of both worlds. You get a little bit of crunch and then you have that beautiful texture of like a biscuit. Let's get started. Now we're gonna get into browning the butter, and this is what's gonna take the cobbler up a notch. That beautiful caramelized milk solids in the butter, that rich nutty aroma and flavor is really gonna make this a standout dessert. Cut this one stick of butter into segments, just to help it melt a little quicker. Then we're just gonna add this to our skillet, turn it on a medium-high heat, and we're just gonna let this melt nice and slow. And what we're looking for is just for the butter to be completely melted, and then it's going to start to bubble and fizz a little bit, and then you're going to start to see those caramelized milk solids on the bottom. And the great thing about brown butter is that you can use this in a lot of dishes, from savory to sweet, and it makes whatever you're cooking that much better. And it smells great. And now the butter is starting to do that fizzy thing, and this is where you really want to pay attention to the process. Feel free to turn down your heat a little bit if the butter starts to sputter a little bit too much. And then we're gonna take a pat of cold butter just to slow it down a bit. That way it doesn't run away on you, because it goes from browning to burning really quick. So you have to keep your eye on it or else you'll be starting over. Make it nice or make it twice. I can already smell and start to see some of the milk solids on the bottom starting to caramelize and turn brown. We're gonna add our cold pat of butter just to slow down the cooking process. We're gonna turn off the heat. And we're just gonna remove this from the heat, stir that cold pat of butter in, give everything a chance just to kind of calm down. Your butter has turned this golden hue. You have this nice foam on top. You are ready to go. Add this to our casserole dish. And this is gonna further stop the cooking process. We're just gonna let this brown butter hang out here while we work on our apple filling. I have two kinds of apples here. We're gonna be using Galas and we're gonna be using Granny Smith apples. The Galas are beautifully sweetened, and then the Granny Smith apples are nice and tart. So it's gonna be like the best of both worlds. Go ahead and slice these off on all sides. Leave them relatively chunky, so we do have some of that beautiful texture in our cobbler. And I'm gonna keep the skin on them for texture and for color. It makes for beautiful presentation on the plate when you get ready to scoop and serve. I love cobblers because they come together in relatively no time at all, and they just make the house smell really good. Another thing you can do with this recipe, if you happen to have some other pantry staples hanging around, is you could add raisins in here, you could chop up some dates, add some dried figs or dried cherries, just to give it a new twist. We're gonna juice our lemon over the apples, and that's just gonna keep them from turning brown. I love the flavor of lemon in desserts. It really makes it pop, and it just kind of brings everything together. Now we're gonna add our other ingredients, dark brown sugar. And if you don't have dark brown sugar, you can also use light brown sugar. You can also use white granulated. We're gonna add a little bit of flour. That's just gonna tighten up our sauce. I love Saigon cinnamon because it's spicy and sweet. And some kosher salt, because of course, that's just gonna make all these flavors meld together and pop. And I like salt in my dessert, so I'm gonna just do a little extra. almond extract is one of my favorite go-tos, and we're just gonna put a little splash in here. And it's gonna pair really well with that brown butter. Combine this all together. And what's gonna happen once we get this all in the oven is the apples are gonna release their juices. They're gonna just add more to these other ingredients and make that beautiful sauce that I was talking about. So you just wanna make sure everything is coated. Pull it in from the bottom, just to make sure all the apples kind of break up. So we have the casserole dish with our beautiful brown butter that we did a little earlier. Add these apples. Just the smell of the cinnamon and the brown butter in close proximity is amazing. Evenly distribute these in the casserole dish, which is gonna allow the cobbler to cook evenly. This topping has big biscuit energy. It's gonna give us the best of both worlds when we have these tart and sweet apples and this nice biscuit topping that's just gonna make this dessert something to be desired. Start with flour, and you just kinda wanna break your flour up first just to make sure there's no air pockets in there and you're getting the proper amount. And now we're gonna add our sugar. And the great thing about this is one of those recipes that requires a little less precision than most baking recipes. We have some baking powder here, our butter. We have some buttermilk here. This is full fat buttermilk. And now we're gonna combine these ingredients together. And you don't wanna overmix this because you don't want it to be tough. Spread this on top of the apples. You don't have to be strategic about this. You just wanna make sure it goes from one side of the casserole dish to the other. And the great thing about this recipe is that you can make it a day or two in advance, just slide it in the fridge, and then you're just gonna warm it up when you pull out your entree items and let it just come up to a little bit above room temp with the residual heat in the oven. And if you wanted a little bit of extra crunch, you could easily top this off with just a little turbinado sugar. It's gonna make the presentation that much more beautiful, and it's gonna give you that nice crunchy bite. Evenly spread this out across the apples. It doesn't have to be one single layer. You can have little pockets and holes. It's gonna rise and spread as it bakes in the oven. This is ready to go in the oven. I used to make ice cream with my great-grandmother when I was a kid all the time. She showed me all of her tips and tricks, but if you don't have time, that's fine. Just grab some from the grocery store on your way home or several days before your gathering, and we're just gonna jazz it up a little bit with a few simple ingredients and make it that much better. So we have some vanilla ice cream here. Take this out 15, 20 minutes before you get ready to add your fillings. You're just gonna loosen it up, and then we're just gonna add this to our bowl. And I have some toasted walnuts here, but you could also use cashews, you could use pecans, macadamia nuts, and I have a little bit of cinnamon. And then we're gonna go with my favorite, just a little sea salt, just to amp up the flavor, bring everything together. And I love, just reiterating that I love salt on dessert. It really gives it a certain something special. Add some butterscotch in, and I'm just gonna put a few generous spoonfuls, and you can just kind of measure this with your heart, more or less depending on your own personal preference. And then we're just gonna swirl all this together. You would not be able to do this very easily if you hadn't taken your ice cream out and let it loosen up a bit. So you definitely want to not skip that step. We have our cinnamon well distributed throughout here, and we have those beautiful striations of the butterscotch. And now we're just gonna add this into our casserole dish. And this just comes together so easily, and you can just have fun with it. You don't have to buy any special ingredients. If you have dried fruit, nuts, things like that in your pantry, of course you're already gonna have herbs and spices. You could have a lot of fun with this and just use what you already have on hand. Spread this out evenly in the casserole dish. And then we're gonna come back and add some more of that butterscotch. And we're just gonna kind of dollop it around. And now we're just gonna swirl this around. It's gonna make for great presentation if anybody is in the kitchen helping you scoop this out as you're preparing to serve dessert, or if you're gonna even just bring it to the table and allow people to scoop it themselves. Swirl it up, swirl it up. Now we're just gonna lid it and put it in the freezer. And now we have our beautiful brown butter apple cobbler ready to go. And then we have our ice cream here that we just grabbed from the store. Store-bought is totally fine. Just jazz it up with a few of your favorite ingredients that you may already have in your pantry. We've chosen a really nice white plate, so all of this and the colors can really pop. It still has a warm tone around the side that I feel just works perfect with the vibe. We're just gonna jump right in here and go ahead and start serving it. And because we have this whole cobbler, you have a couple of options. You can either use a spatula and cut it into squares, or you can just use an oversized ice cream scoop and just get some beautiful scoops out of here. This smells fantastic. You can see that beautiful caramel sauce dripping. The apples are just nicely tender. You still have the texture of that skin. That biscuit topping has a nice brown top to it. It's gonna be nice, creamy, crunchy. We're just gonna get a nice scoop of this. This looks fantastic. You have the residual warmth from the cobbler melting those beautiful pools of ice cream down into the plate. It's gonna make for a great presentation. What I really love about this dessert is just the combination of that brown butter, the liquid gold that we added, that really kicks this up a notch, in combination with that beautiful biscuit topping, the add-ins that we put in our store-bought ice cream, and it just makes for a really stellar dessert that's great for any gathering.